Hello everybody, my name is Mitch and today I'm going to do a full card fight predictions for UFC Fight Night, Whittaker versus Gastelum. If you're new here, we go over the fight picks first and then we'll talk about the reasons why after. So let's go ahead and get started with the picks. We have Jessica Penn versus Lupita Godinez, Josiane Nunes, Jacob Malkoun, Tony Gravely, Ricardo Ramos, Luis Pena, Natan Levy, Tracy Cortez, Chase Sherman, Jeremy Stevens, Alexander Romanov, Gerald Meerschaert, and Robert Whittaker. Those are my picks, and I'll go into the reasons why. Alright, so first we have Jessica Penn versus Lupita Godinez. We talked about Jessica Penn briefly because I think she was supposed to fight on Darren Till versus Marvin Vettori. But at any rate, we didn't pick her then, and we're not going to pick her here. We have Jessica Penn. She's still 38. She's still coming off of this 3-loss streak. It looks like she last fought in 2017. I think something to do with steroids. She got suspended. She's coming back. On the other end, we have Lupita Godinez. She is currently undefeated in MMA, and I believe she was the strawweight LFA champion. I'll leave some other names of LFA champions like Casey Kenny, Ryan Spann, Ricky Simon, familiar names. Basically, LFA is something to be respected, I feel, especially at the championship caliber. At any rate, we are going to go with Lupita Godinez. Next off, we have Zarah Fairn versus Josiane Nunes. On Zarah Fairn's side of things, we see she's on a 2-fight losing streak, although it is pretty good competition, but her 2 fights in the UFC are both losses since she's started MMA again. I noticed there is this gap here from 2017, 2 years later, to 2019 with back-to-back losses. That doesn't look great. On the other side of things, we have Brazilian fighter Josiane Nunes. She is on quite a win streak here. She last lost in 2013, quite a while ago, to Talia Santos, who, if we go and look at Talia Santos's side, that is not a terrible loss, 17-1. She is beating people. She's on a winning streak ever since her UFC debut here against Mara Borella. But at any rate, I feel like Brazilians, especially in the female division, are pretty strong. I'm not sure if other countries have as developed female fighters. I'm not sure if there's any truth to that, but at any rate, I'm going to go with Josiane Nunes here. Next we have Abdul Razak Al Hassan versus Jacob Malkoun. On Abdul's side, we see an impressive win over Nico Price, but then a 2-fight skid to Munir Lassess and Chaos Williams. I think it's going to be a third fight, or a third loss in a row, rather, to Jacob Malkoun. Jacob Malkoun is coming off of a loss to Phil Hawes. Really, maybe I'm over-respecting Jacob Malkoun because he trains with Robert Whittaker, but at any rate, that's how it is. I know that he does train with Robert Whittaker, and I think that experience in the training room is helpful. He also fought Phil Hawes at 185, so now he's going to be fighting at 170. Unless his weight cut is so bad to where his chin just gets touched and he gets knocked out, I think he'll be able to be bigger and just, kind of win into a decision, win 2 out of the 3 rounds. I'm going with Jacob Malkoun. Next we have Tony Gravely versus Anthony Burchak. Tony Gravely is training out of American Top Team. I think in his last fight against Geraldo de Freitas, I learned that he was a high school state wrestling championship twice. At any rate, that did show in this fight. He was getting a bunch of takedowns. And now he fights Anthony Burchak. In Anthony Burchak's last fight, there really wasn't that much to see. He kind of got beat pretty badly and then just choked out. He looks like he's lost a grappling bout as well. I don't see why Tony Gravely won't be able to, get constant takedowns at will and just kind of definitely win 2 out of the 3 rounds here. We're going with Tony Gravely. Next we have Ricardo Ramos versus Bill Algeo. On Ricardo Ramos' side, this last fight against Lerone Murphy, he was doing a lot of good things. I feel like maybe he was even winning a lot of the first round. He was doing this weird kick thing, which Bisping, and I will agree with Bisping in saying that I was not a big fan of it. His only losses here are to Lerone Murphy, who is undefeated, and Said Nurmagomedov, who is a crazy man. His only loss is to Raoni Barcelos, who is another crazy man, and we'll get into those fighters as they have fights coming up in the future. But at any rate, we have Ricardo Ramos that's going to fight Bill Algeo here. Bill Algeo's last fight was a pretty, I would say, boring for lack of a better term, fight against Spike Carlisle. They kind of looked too tired or unable to complete a takedown, so they were kind of just looking tired, hugging it out, if you will. I do think Ricardo Ramos has the stand-up ability to cause a lot of problems for Bill Algeo in this one. Next we have Luis Pena versus Alex Munoz. Luis Pena fights out of American Kickboxing Academy. His last fight against Kama Worthy, it was a pretty good fight. I would say stand-up to me kind of looked like it was going back and forth. Eventually he loses with a guillotine choke here. And then on the other side we have Alex Munoz. He's fighting with Team Alpha Male. He is coming off of a loss in his UFC debut against a tough debut, honestly, against Nasrat Haqparast. I remember this fight, Alex Munoz was trying to move forward to get a takedown. It seemed like he wanted. Nasrat seemed like he didn't have a problem defending the takedown, and it made stand-up easy for him. I think Luis Pena is going to be able to do similar things, use his length, use his whipping kicks, and keep him at bay. We're going with Luis Pena. Next I have Nathan Levy versus Austin Hubbard. On Nathan Levy's side of things, in his last fight he wins against Shaheen Santana with an arm triangle choke. Shaheen Santana has a lot of finishes by submission of his own. Nathan was able to defend all of those submissions. He was able to kind of pressure the fight, get takedowns, control from the top. On the other hand, we have Austin Hubbard. He's coming off of a loss to Joe Selecki. I don't think that's a bad loss at all. Joe Selecki is super impressive. At any rate, I do think Nathan Levy is going to be able to implement a similar game plan, approach Austin Hubbard, take him down, pressure him, and also win in the stand-up game as well. I'm going with Nathan Levy. Next, we have Tracy Cortez versus Justine Kish. Now, Tracy Cortez, as in her last fight against Stephanie Egger, was able to approach and kind of, get her takedowns, wrestle and pressure, top position, stuff like that. And that is what we see happening in this fight as well. In Justine Kish's last bout against Sabino Mazo, she has a pretty good kickboxing match that ends in her getting choked out with the rear naked choke. But I don't see Justine Kish's stand-up being, good enough to the point where she's going to keep Tracy Cortez away from taking her down, pressuring her, and winning 2 out of the 3 rounds. We're going with Tracy Cortez. Next we have Chase Sherman versus Parker Porter. If we look at Chase Sherman's history here, he's coming off of a win versus Ike Villanueva. He was winning this fight pretty handedly, I'd say, on the stand-up. He was approaching in, causing Ike to try to counter. He looked good on the stand. He was calf kicking pretty hard. He looked strong, good, light on his feet. On the other hand, we have Parker Porter. Parker Porter is coming off of a win over Josh Parashin. This fight looked kind of like a tired mess, in my opinion. He did win the decision unanimously, but I think it's going to be a different case with Chase Sherman. I think Chase Sherman's going to be kicking his leg, pushing the pace. I see Josh getting tired, and honestly, I would bet on this fight not going 3 rounds, Chase Sherman getting the finish. We're going with Chase Sherman. Next we have Jakar Close versus Jeremy Stephens. I really like watching Jakar Close fight. He reminds me of Justin Gaethje in that he's going to go in there and try to take your head off. He's down to brawl, and he almost did that to Beneil Dariush. He almost took his head off. Round 1, I think Beneil Dariush kind of climbed on his back and just held him like a tree the whole round. And then round 2, they just kind of went at it. It was a brawl. Beneil Dariush ends up knocking out Jakar Close. It was a pretty good fight. I'd recommend watching it. On the other end, We have Jeremy Stephens, who is coming off of a bunch of tough losses, but I don't care what you say, they're all just some killers. We have Calvin Kattar, Yair Rodriguez, Zabit, Jose Aldo, Renato, Frankie Edgar, Max Holloway, Charles Oliveira, Cub Swanson. And if we look at his losses, I don't think there's any reason to honestly suspect that Jeremy Stephens might get knocked out. So I think when Drakkar Klose gets in these crazy brawl exchanges, which I think he will, I think Jeremy Stephens is going to come out on top because he's the hardest hitting 145er in the division or whatever. They are fighting at 145. Drakkar Klose, let's see him at 145. Sometimes I wonder basically is if you cut a lot of weight, can you take punches as well? I'm not so sure. Curious about your guys' thoughts on that. Leave a comment if you do happen to hear that and have thoughts on that. But at any rate, we're going with Jeremy Stephens for this fight. Next, we have Alexander Romanov versus Juan Espino. Both of these fighters appear to be wanting to get close and take them down, take their opponent down. On Alexander Romanov's side, we see his last win is against Marcos Rogero de Lima. Now, real quick, I want to go into Marcos Rogero de Lima's history. As we can see, he is a UFC fighter. He's been fighting in the UFC for a while. Not the craziest resume, but definitely a UFC fighter experienced in the UFC. If we go to Juan Espino's side, who only has one loss, if we go back to Alexander Romanov, we do see he is an undefeated fighter, 13-0. Now on Juan Espino's side, he is 10-1. He is also 40. I want to bring that up. Alexander Romanov is 30. Anyway, back to Juan Espino. If we go to his history, Justin Frazier and Jeff Hughes, I want to bring them up here. On Justin Frazier's side of things, he did not make it to the UFC after losing. On the other side of things, we have Jeff Hughes, who is just coming off of losses, including one of his losses was to Maurice Green, who Juan Espinizo already beat in this exhibition bout. So I'm not even sure why that matchup made sense to anybody, but it probably didn't matter because no one really noticed about it until me just now. At any rate, I'm saying all of this to say that we are going to see a win by Alexander Romanov. I could see this one being a finish as well. We are going to go with Alexander Romanov. Next, we have Gerald Meerschaert versus Bartosz Fabrinski. On Jared Meerschaert's side, the last time we saw him, I'm sure you've all saw where Khamzat Chimaev just ended his life, just walked up to him and just lights out. Other than that, we see a loss to Ian Heinisch, who I feel like is a respectable loss. Just honestly, a lot of losses in recent history here. Now he pulls Bartosz Fabinski. I didn't really know who Fabinski was. I looked at his last fight here, and this was a pretty unenthusiastic fight, I guess, if you will. Seems like he kind of tries to pressure, ends up losing to an armbar. We think that, honestly, Dana White is kind of throwing him a bone after they fed him to the cash cow that is Khamzat Chimaev. I think the UFC is going to reward him for playing ball, and they're giving him kind of a layup fight, if you will. And I see Jared Meerschaert winning over Bartosz Fabinski here. Last but not least, we have the main event, Robert Whittaker versus Kelvin Gastelum. I did do a video on this already, and I'll leave a link to that below, but at any rate, I'll go ahead and talk about this fight real quick. If we look at Robert Whittaker's side of things, we see just an impressive win streak. Loses to Stephen Thompson. Maybe the GOAT of 170? I don't know. Am I out of line to even suggest it? We have him losing to Israel Adesanya. I feel like that's who Kelvin Gastelum is going to have to try to take a page out of the book from. We see he's coming off of some tough losses and then beats Ian Heinisch. This was a pretty good fight, although if we look at Ian Heinisch, and I talk about this in the other video, we're not sure if he really belonged to be in there with Kelvin Gastelum quite yet. I feel like if Kelvin Gastelum is going to try to mimic things like Israel Adesanya, that's kind of weird because Kelvin Gastelum is like the opposite shape of Israel Adesanya. If Kelvin's going to win, I think it has to be a finish. If this goes 5 rounds, I think everyone sees Robert Whittaker winning. If Kelvin Gastelum were to get the finish, I could see it being either with a straight punch or an uppercut. I kind of lean maybe a counter uppercut. I don't really know. It's hard for me to really see happening. I think Robert Whittaker is going to come in, kind of do whatever he wants. I'm excited for the fight, but I am going with Robert Whittaker for this one. Let me know what you guys think is going to happen. Thanks for watching this video. Please consider hitting the subscribe button. Here are some events we have coming up, and I will be doing a video on all of them. I try to post a video every week, so if you are interested in more videos like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and consider hitting the like button. Leave a comment on what you think. Feel free to follow me on other platforms to check out what's going on there. Here we've got a bobblehead giveaway on Twitter. But at any rate, thank you again for watching this video. I will see you guys Saturday. Peace.